Hi, I'm Colin Seale. I'm the founder and CEO of Think Law, where we're all about creating a space where critical thinking is no longer a luxury good. But today, I'm not talking to you about the work that we lead in 40 states, including Arizona, to close the critical thinking gap and unlock excellence systemically through our work with teachers and our work with families. I'm talking about something a lot deeper, a lot more personal. It's personal to me as somebody who really got super lucky in a system that was not designed for kids like me to experience success, and as someone who has a personal stake in this matter as a father, as a parent, as many of you do in your roles. The issue that I want to talk about is how can we create a system that finally decides that excellence matters in the classroom. I want to be clear with you all. Part of why I'm so passionate about gifted education is just an extension of our natural passion. We know that if we saw a little kid who's 7 years old watching the Olympics who happens to see Simone Biles do a ridiculous backflip and goes on in your living room to do the same ridiculous backflip with no training whatsoever, no one will question throwing that kids in gymnastics classes, making sure that that child has all they need to nurture that talent, that gift. Also, if you got a 13-year-old who hears a song on the radio and without training goes on to play beautifully on the piano without any formal instruction in piano playing, you better be sure this kid is going to get all sorts of musical instruction, all sorts of music theory to really understand, learn how to songwrite, learn how to read and listen to music like we wouldn't ever doubt the development of that potential. So we need to create spaces where academically it's the same thing. But one of the reasons that we need your support as advocates of gifted education is that not everybody is wired this way. Not everybody understands the extent to which we are leaving genius on the table. By writing to your legislators, and asking them to support the bill to expand and permanently make full gifted education so that we can do universal screening. We're going to create a space where in our rural areas, in our low income areas, in any type of school that your kid is going to that's a public school, whether that school be virtual, whether it be district, whether it be charter, gifted education isn't just an unfunded mandate, but it's a funded mandate that allows you to actually get your screening paid for. We have no clue to the brilliance that we're leaving on a table because if your kid is gifted and they might not get recognized. And you might not understand what I'm saying when I'm saying gifted and until you recognize that gifted is not something that just kind of lays out in space as something that's isolated. This hits me personally as well because I was identified gifted at 7 years old, diagnosed with ADHD at 37. I've been twice exceptional my whole life, but never got those supports. And had it been the case that somebody would have noticed another aspect of my persona, of my neurodiversity earlier on, I very well could have been identified in special education without ever receiving those supports. And today we've got kids who are twice exceptional. They're dyslexic and they're gifted. English is not their first language and they're gifted. They're a mischievous child who comes up in the middle of me doing a recording about advocacy and they're gifted. So when we start looking at what we need you to do, I need you to go and Google to figure out who your legislators are. You might not think it makes a difference, but sending emails, that's not a form letter, but an actual email asking them to support this bill, to fund fully and permanently gifted education, to screen more for gifted education because we're leaving genius on the table. Funding screening is going to be such a game changer, particularly for those of you all who reside in rural communities, who reside in communities where funding is inadequate. Note, funding is inadequate for schools in every Arizona community if you have not realized this. By the time that most school systems would implement universal screening, and by universal screening, I mean we're delivering this gifted assessment, this gifted tool to figure out who has potential to be tested further for gifted across the board. Not doing it by recommendation, not doing it by ways that we've proven to show are inequitable and don't create the results. I'm going to be clear with you all. Currently, only 8% of Arizona students are identified gifted. That's not an accurate number. If we go into that 8%, we know that the inequities, the disproportionalities of not seeing enough kids from low SES backgrounds, right, from low income families, Not enough Black students, not enough Latinx students, not enough Native students, not enough students from rural areas, not enough students that attend schools where gifted education is even offered to begin with. So, if we want to change this, if we want to create a norm where we're no longer sitting here obsessing over closing achievement gaps, but we start talking about the very real need to shatter achievement ceilings. You need to call your legislators. You need to be able to email your legislators. If you don't know who they are, go to Arizona, find my legislator. And the state has a great website to break it down and make it really clear of how you contact them. And you might not realize this, but we have a citizens legislator. These are not people that believe that they're on some high and mighty mantle. They actually want your support. They want your feedback. They don't always know exactly how to vote on certain issues because gifted education is one of those things that people tend to not understand unless they were gifted themselves or they have children who are in gifted programs. So let's make sure we talk in the language that they're going to understand. We got to focus on unlocking excellence. If we want to make sure that our kids are ready for a future where they can lead, where they can innovate, we've got to make sure we are not just teaching to that mythical middle child because that's all we know how to do. We also know that in this conversation around learning loss and everything happening with the pandemic, some people might say, oh, well, gifted is the least of my concerns. If we're being honest, if we were to train more educators and had a bigger budget for gifted education so that it's not just about identification, but having a quality program, it turns out that same exact skill set that it takes to ensure that a fifth grader who's reading at third grade level can be accelerated appropriately matches the skill set that a fifth grader who's reading at the eighth grade level needs to accelerate appropriately. We're no longer going to design education around the lowest common denominator. We are going to lift all boats. A rising tide is going to lift all the boats. We're going to focus on excellence as the outcome because we're sick and tired of leaving genius on the table. So we're going to be asking to fully and permanently fund gifted education in our state by making universal screening a part of what's getting funded and also making sure that we fund the programming that gifted programs need to be able to ensure teachers can actually teach and reach the unique needs that nurture giftedness, that allow it to be the case where we don't have chronic underachievement because we set up a framework where good enough is too often good enough. I'm Colin Seale, and I'm really happy to be working in conjunction with the Arizona Association for Gifted and Talented on this effort, but it doesn't work without you. Don't believe that you don't matter. Every single email, every single phone call and voicemail, it gets listened to, it gets tracked. So please make that effort and reach out. This is a bipartisan issue. We want to fully and permanently fund gifted education. We want to make sure that we're funding universal screening. We want to make sure that we're funding the program for gifted education so that people actually are getting what they need over the long haul. We want to make sure that we are not just in the business of closing achievement gaps, but shattering achievement ceilings. Oliver, anything you want to add?
Black Lives Matter.
All right, there we go. That's all we need to say. Thank you all so much.